This is one of my piece by piece grouping. This piece, the title I may change. I'm not 100% sure. Right now I'm calling it Out of the Dark. This piece is a little more impromptu than some of the other pieces I've had on the channel. I came up with this piece kind of all in one night. I was reading a little bit of Joseph Campbell's work. I was about to say Carl Jung, but Carl Jung's a whole nother thing. I was reading some of Joseph Campbell's work, just sort of passing some time, and I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about what Peterson talks about when he talks about the Holy Grail crest and how each of the Knights of the Round Table had to enter the forest at the darkest point they saw, and how that's correct. When you're trying to find the thing of value and the thing of use, you have to go into like the oblivion almost, and that's similar to the whole prospect of you have to journey to the underworld to rescue your father, which is this emblem of rescuing society. So I was thinking about all of that, and I was reading a little bit of Joseph Campbell, and I kind of had this moment where I realized that I wanted to be able to portray that ideal in a very minimalist way. So I thought to myself, what is the most minimal from light to dark expression I can think of? And so I just decided to go with a gradient. And so like portraying the metaphor physically, like just not beating around the bush at all. And so I went from white to black, and then I wanted to present that grail item, and it wouldn't have had to have been a grail necessarily, because as Peterson explains, the grail and the golden snitch and like that item of value all kind of mean the same thing. They're the treasure that the dragon hoards. So it kind of in a way could have been any of those things. And so if you don't relate well to the grail, thinking about it as the snitch, the item that wins the game, is helpful sometimes. But I decided to go with the grail because there's part of that whole idea of the cup of life and the sharing, and that part of society, that breaking bread with each other and that true communion that is, I think in some ways it's missing from culture, or and it's displaced. And then it's also, it's a little tragedy that we don't understand the sacredness of breaking bread with each other and communing with each other and sharing the source of life with each other. Or even when we do, it's not that it's not done maybe, but it's not held as sacred. And so thinking about grail imagery and all of that, I wanted to put that into this idea. And then the whole idea that it's on fire and it's illuminating and it is the source of light, that was exciting to me. And so that's why the cup is on fire. And I did the figure right in the middle of the gray, and I started this thing with an inverse shadow, so it's kind of the figure coping with the impression of himself on the world. And I probably, as I continue to develop this idea, would like to do multiple shadows. So there would be a shadow from the upper light source, and perhaps a shadow from the grail, and like a yellow light on the figure, and yellow light kind of dispersed more accurately in the landscape. But I haven't gotten there yet. This is just something that is completely out of my head with no models. That's why it has the kind of illustrative, more cartoony look. I am pretty happy with how it came out, even though it was a very impromptu piece. I did these border pieces by just laying down a piece of painter's tape and then doing a little bit of staining on the wood and then pulling the painter's tape off after gessoing the rest. And I like that look. I like leaving a little bit of the wood exposed. And this wood is wood from the inside of skim boards because there's always a percentage of the board that can't be used when you cut out a skim board. And I have a friend down here in Florida who makes skim boards. And so we made a deal about cleaning a room and then me getting a bunch of skim board scrap with another friend of mine who does art. And so I feel like I really won, and I don't think he has any idea how much I won in that arrangement. But anyway, so it's nice to be using a sort of recycled material that is of this high quality. And they're lighter than some of the boards I've used in the past, so that just makes it way more functional for hanging on any wall. Some of my work was on some pretty heavy wood last year, and I like it. It looks nice, but practically, if you're putting it on the average drywall, you start stretching the limits. Um, so yeah, I hope to do this whole piece again in the future with a rendition with a model. And I would like to have the model, I usually do something like just jeans and a t-shirt, very like basic American wear. So that's probably what they would end up wearing. And then I would like to find a big metal cup that I could light on fire, and I would like to float it out on a pool at night, and then light it on fire, and then take photos, and then use those photos as my light model, because you're just not going to get as good of an effect until you do that. And for practical reasons, I decided to do this piece before I could do the light model so I wouldn't forget any of it, because sometimes waiting for models and stuff takes a couple of years. But I still like it. I think it's one of my best ideas, and I can't wait to continue to flesh it out. I hope you've enjoyed viewing. Have a great night.